Well, earlier today, the Shadow Immigration Minister Scott Morrison arrived home from a 4-day visit to Malaysia. He says it was to assess conditions for asylum seekers firsthand, but the government has labelled his trip a destructive stunt. Scott Morrison joined me a short time ago in the Sydney studio. Scott Morrison, you had meetings with senior officials from the Home Affairs Office in Malaysia. What did they tell you?
They answered questions that the government here has refused to answer for over the last 8 weeks. They made it very clear that there would be no preferential treatment for those sent to Malaysia. Now, that means, and we went through this, they won't be allowed to go to public schools, they won't have access to public hospitals unless they pay, they won't have work rights, which leaves them very exposed in that community, as well, not only just to employers who take advantage of them, but if you're arrested for illegal work, then you're off to prison or a detention centre. Did
the Malaysian officials tell you from their perspective what's the hold-up with the deal?
There are still a few sticking points. One is what will be done with those who aren't refugees and who will return them and how will that happen, or can they stay in Malaysia? The other is where those who are sent from Australia will actually be accommodated when they first go there. They confirmed that it wouldn't be the 7-year detention centre where there were rumours it would have been that centre, and so they still haven't worked out that detail. So they've said early July they told us that they hope to have an agreement finalised.
So they still think from their end there will be a deal?
They do, and that's the basis they're proceeding on.
So then are you satisfied from what you've seen there that the human rights of asylum seekers Australia sends to Malaysia would be protected?
No, and I'm not, for two reasons. One is, if there is no preferential treatment, then I know what the current arrangements are, and that's not acceptable. But secondly, even with the best will in the world, even with all the sign-offs that people may want to give, the practical difficulties of ensuring that people aren't harassed on a daily basis, the practical difficulties of someone who has to work to survive. I mean, they confirmed to us in the meeting that they'd have to find their own accommodation when they got out of that initial place for processing. Now, they've got to pay for that.
So, in effect, what you are saying is that basically you don't trust the Malaysian government to protect the human rights of people that Australia would send there.
Now, what I'm saying is I don't trust the Australian government to be able to come to an agreement here that can live up to the guarantees that they say are in place.
You're saying when these people arrive in Malaysia, their human rights will not be sufficiently protected, and that's the responsibility of the Malaysian government.
Well, I'd argue this. It's the Australian government who wants to send 800 people there. It's the Australian government who needs to ensure these things are in place. They understand. They should know what the arrangements are in Malaysia. And if they don't believe that that can be done, and I don't think it can be done, then they shouldn't be sending people here.
You have just been in Malaysia and you've sat here and given me your assessment of the conditions there. In effect, you are saying that the Malaysian government cannot guarantee the human rights of these people.
Well, this is the practical reality, Leigh, and the Australian government should know that. And the Australian government should not be going down this path when they know that that is the case. Now, if they don't know that is the case, then they should do what I've just done. And I'm happy to share my experiences with them. But they should know that the practical realities of trying to live up to the guarantees that they say are in place are delusional from their part.
Is it appropriate for a member of the opposition to visit a foreign country, an ally of Australia, and criticise that country's practices?
Well, I haven't criticised their practice. I've criticised the Australian government, Leigh. I'm criticising the Australian government for entering into an arrangement that will send